أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Inshallah everyone is doing well. Welcome to another one of our Mizan live sessions. First I want to take a moment to mention that hopefully everyone has had a good break. I know that the break is still going on. I was talking to some of the brothers, and apparently the break goes on for quite a bit of a long time. But we wanted to, inshallah, take advantage of this time that we have also in between the break to, inshallah, continue with our discussion, to hopefully give it a little bit more of consistency with the discussion that we have been having. But inshallah, hopefully this year 2019 inshallah will be a good year. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it will be a good year, and of course a lot of that will fall on us ourselves in terms of the effort and the work and the the hard work that we need to put in as followers of the religion of Islam, and particularly followers of the school of thought of the Ahlul Bayt, inshallah. Hopefully you've had a chance to sit down, spend some time with family, spend some time with relatives that maybe usually we don't get a chance to really spend time with due to the lifestyle that we live in this part of the world where things are so far away. You have relatives in different cities, friends in different cities, you can't really visit them on a normal basis. Hopefully these couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, have given us a chance to go and visit friends. If we can't visit them, at least give them a call, at least see how they're doing, inshallah, and hopefully have a little bit of, as we call it in the ahadith, it's called silatul rahim, get a chance to greet and meet family members and relatives and things of that nature. So we're going to continue with our discussion. As you guys know, inshallah, I'll be doing the ahkam. Shaykh Amin will be doing the Shia doctrine. And his sessions will start again from tomorrow. Like we were covering before, we were talking about the conditions of prayer, and we discussed, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we finished just the first of the conditions, and that was the issue of timing. We spent 2 sessions on that just because it had quite a bit of details. But moving forward, I don't think we're going to have that many details in the conditions of prayer that we have. So today, inshallah, we're going to be moving on to the topic of Qibla and the rulings of Qibla. There's a discussion there. I don't think today's session will be too long, so if you guys have questions, you can start sending them in from right now. We'll have more time for questions today, inshallah. But we'll be discussing Qibla, the rulings regarding Qibla. There are some questions that come up there that personally, when I was learning the rulings, I didn't know, and it made things a little difficult for me, in the sense that if I knew those rulings, life would be a lot easier for me. So hopefully we'll be going through those. Next session, we'll be discussing the clothing that someone needs to wear in their prayer. Does it affect their prayer? Does it not affect their prayer? Does it make their prayer maybe batil in certain situations or not? What type of clothing can you have on? What if the clothing you're having is, maybe it's a little najis, maybe the clothing that you have is, maybe you're not sure if it's from an animal that was slaughtered properly. What if you don't know if your clothing is najis? And there's a lot of questions that will come up in that regard. So that we'll be discussing that mainly in the next session. And after that, we'll get to the place in which we are praying. And that also has a couple of rulings that, again, can make life a lot easier for us who are trying to practice these rulings. So, but today we'll be focusing on Qibla and the rulings regarding that. I've mentioned this already. Feel free to leave your questions, your comments. If it's a question or comment you have during the session, you can just put it in the comment section and we'll be going through those. If it's a question that you come across afterwards, please do not put it in the comment sections in the video. It's going to get lost in the comments that we have in there. So please do send a direct message to Mizan Institute's inbox, and we'll inshallah get back to you once we get a chance. Yep, that's pretty much it. And if you do ask a question, please do mention who you follow. As I've mentioned before, that does play a big role in answering the questions. Okay, let me take a quick look at our feed here just to see. Assalamu alaikum. Yes, a lot of salams. I can't say all the salams back, so I'm just going to say assalamu alaikum once. Assalamu alaikum to all the brothers and sisters. Very nice to have all you guys with us. It seems like it's the break, and a lot of people are, we have a lot of people who maybe usually they might be working and it might be a little difficult for them to tune in. Alhamdulillah, we have a good turnout today. So assalamu alaikum to all of you guys. Happy to have you guys with us. Okay. Let me do a quick review of what we discussed in the previous session, inshallah. And then we'll move on to the issue of qibla. Okay, so in the previous session, this was the second session, we were discussing the idea of timings of prayer. These are some of the rulings that we covered in that session. First of all, we said that as long as you're not sure if you have enough time to pray your namaz or not, you still have to pray that namaz. So if you remember, we said that if you have time for one rakat of your prayer to be within the allowed time, you have to get up and you have to pray that prayer. It's not qada. You can't sit there and say, it's already qada, I'll pray it like, tomorrow or the day after, right? No, if you have enough time to fit in one rakat, that's going to be enough time for you. Like, you have to get up and you have to pray, basically. Okay, so we covered that. The ruling that we mentioned last week was that if you're not sure, and this is more practical really, right? Because at the end of the day, like, let's say they say, hey, sunshine is like 5:20. Okay, if sunshine is 5:20 and the ruling is if I have enough time to fit in one rakat, usually we don't know exactly how much one rakat is going to take. We don't know, and we don't know if 5:20 is it like 5:20 and 30 seconds, or is it like 5:20 if it. So basically, a lot of times the situation that we're actually dealing with is we're not sure. If you're not sure, then you have to do your namaz normally, right? And you cannot take away the surah. Okay, and we'll get to that in just a second. Okay, so that was the first ruling that we mentioned. Moving on, the second ruling that we mentioned was that if you pray and then later on you realize that your prayer, all of it was before the time of the prayer, then you have to redo all of those prayers. Even if, like, the reason why you thought the time of namaz has come was a valid reason initially, right? Maybe you got a timetable, maybe even from a pretty reliable place, right? But then later on, you found out that it was wrong. Okay, maybe it was wrong by 10-15 minutes. So you were praying 10-15 minutes ahead of time every time, right? Or half an hour ahead of time. And this is very much plausible with Fajr namaz because there's so much, quite a bit of differences of opinion. If you just go on these apps and you switch between the method of calculation between these apps, you will see that it's going to be very different. So if I pray like this and then later on I find out that my namaz was actually outside of the time of prayer fully, then I will have to redo my whole prayer. We covered that. If a part of your prayer ends up in the time, that's going to be fine if you find out later. Okay. Third ruling we mentioned is that sometimes when I'm going to pray, but I have an excuse to either alter the idea of doing wudu, like I'm going to do tayammum instead, or praying in a specific way that I don't normally pray that way. What is the ruling there? Let me just fix my phone is a little high, I think. Okay, that's better. So when I'm praying and I want to change something, either I don't want to do wudu and I want to do tayammum because I have a certain excuse, or because the way I want to pray in a different way. Like, for example, normally we pray standing up. Now I want to pray sitting down. I have an excuse. We said that in certain situations where there is a chance that later on that excuse will be taken care of, then we said in certain situations you would have to wait. You can't just go and pray on time, right? You would have to wait until that excuse probably goes away, or at least until a point where you are sure, you're like, wait, this is not going to go away anymore. My namaz is becoming qada in like 20 minutes. I'm sure this isn't going to be resolved in 20 minutes. Okay, then you can go and pray. Now, there were some details there. I don't want to go into the details. The ruling of Ayatul Istisna and Ayatul Khamni was slightly different there. But if you do want to be on the safe page, when you have an excuse that allows you to do tayammum, or you have an excuse that allows you to pray while sitting down, for example, or any things of that nature, to be on the safe side, if you just want to be on the safe side, you don't have to pray on time. Just wait. And then if you reach a point where you're sure that this excuse that you have is not going to be resolved, then go ahead and pray your prayer. Okay. Let's see here. Next ruling that we mentioned, and this is the last ruling from our review. So I'll go through this and then I'll take a look. I know we have a question that has come in. This last ruling was the idea of waking up for Fajr, right? Or basically the idea of making sure you're awake for any salat. I mean, I mentioned Fajr just because it happens mostly when it comes to Fajr, of course. But it can happen with other prayers as well, and I'll explain some examples for that. So, what's the ruling there? We said there are 2 points that you have to pay attention to. First of all, when we want to, when we have a certain time of prayer, right? Like let's say it's like Fajr namaz. You have 2 hours, an hour and a half, an hour to pray Fajr namaz. One thing we know for sure is that you cannot do anything that you will be sure that you won't wake up for the Fajr, for the prayer. Right? So you're not allowed to do that. So like for example, if I sleep half an hour before Fajr, and because of the type of sleeper I am, I know I'm not going to wake up. That's not going to be allowed because you're purposefully sleeping before Fajr, knowing that you're not going to wake up, right? If I, let's say I sleep, let's say I sleep and I don't set any alarms, right? And I know the type of person I am, there's no chance I'm going to wake up, right? I know some of the brothers who can relate to this very well, okay? I'm not allowed to do that. Then I have to set an alarm, right? So anything that I do that is going to completely compromise the chance of me waking up for a salat or being awake for a salat, that's definitely not allowed. We're not going to be talking about that. And one of the examples for that is, for example, taking pills, right? When you have to take a pill, if there's any way to take the pill later, then you would have to do that. If taking the pill is such that you know for a fact that if I take this pill, I'm not going to wake up for like my namaz, right? Be it Fajr or any other prayer that you're praying. Then the same ruling applies, right? If you can take the pill at another time. Sometimes you can't. Well, then that's just a medical emergency and you'd have to do that. And of course you have to make up for those prayers later on. But so this is one part of the ruling. You cannot do anything that will compromise your chance, at least, of waking up for prayer. Okay? That's one part. The second part of the ruling, which we added, was this. That, listen, if I am doing something that still gives me a chance to wake up for Fajr, for example, but the problem is 3, 4, 5, 6 times I haven't been waking up. So much so that people consider me taking salat lightly. When I say people considering me taking salat lightly, it's not like someone was stalking me 5 a.m. and they're like, oh, this guy is taking salat lightly. That's not what we're talking about. What I mean is that, like, if people were to see the way I'm living my life, they say, hey, he doesn't care about salat too much. If this happens, then you have to take your game up a notch, right, in my wording. And you really have to try harder, because now it is wajib for you to do that, because you have now reached the point where people say he's taking his salat lightly, and that is haram. Okay? Now we don't have this when it comes to other acts of worship, and this is one of those things that makes salat specifically important in Islam. For other acts of worship, let's say for example, I have a clothing that's najis. This clothing that's najis, if I keep forgetting and I take this, well, let's change up the example a little bit. Well, I mean, this is fine. Let me just continue with this. I have this clothing, it's najis, and I keep praying with it, right? Now, if I know this, it's not going to be allowed, right? But I keep forgetting. If I keep forgetting every time, I'm not doing anything haram, right? Because I keep forgetting. Yes, I have to make up for the prayers later on, so it's not a good thing to do, but I'm still not doing anything haram. But because if it was salat that we were talking about, no, you would have to take up your game a notch. Why? Because then you would have to take that clothing and put it away. Why? Because you would be considered taking salat lightly, whereas for other things, that may not be the case, right? So I don't know if I was able to explain that point too well or not. You will forgive me if I wasn't able to explain it too well. But basically the idea is you cannot compromise a chance of waking up for salat. Also, you have to take salat seriously enough that people don't say, hey, he's just taking it lightly. And of course, we're talking about the red lines here. Of course, we want to be better than this, but these are just the red lines. Okay. So this was the review that we have from the previous session. Let me just take a quick look. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Ezra. Thank you very much for being with us. Dr. Akbar, thank you very much for being with us, and the other brothers and sisters who are with us. Muhammad Ali Ja'far from Toronto says, if one prays Fajr before Ihtiyat and his prayer happens to be outside the Fajr time, would he be punished for it? Well, you're never going to be punished because you did it unknowingly, right? I've had this, it's interesting, I've had this question multiple times where people ask me to like, Shaykh, I did this, but I didn't know. Am I going to be punished? Well, you're not going to be punished if you didn't know. But if you prayed and then later on you found out that your prayer was outside of the time of namaz, then yes, you have to redo that prayer, if that's your question, from what I understand. If one prays Fajr before Ihtiyat and his prayer happens to be outside the Fajr time. Yeah, I think I answered that question if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So moving on, let me move on to the rulings that we have for Qibla. These are pretty simple rulings, so we'll be moving through them very quickly, inshallah. First ruling. Okay, so first of all, we know that we're supposed to face the Qibla when we're praying. Okay, hopefully we're all clear on that. But alongside that ruling, one ruling that comes into play is this, and this is one that I've seen a lot of people do not know. I remember even some of the students in the Hawza, when they were just like the first year of their studying, they didn't know this ruling, and they were a lot of times confused about it. That for wajib prayers, we all know you're supposed to face towards the Qibla. For mustahab prayers, a lot of people think you don't have to face the Qibla, and that's wrong. You do have to face the Qibla for mustahab prayers. Yes, when you are in a car or you're riding on an animal, which doesn't really happen to us anymore, right? Unless you're really well off and you're doing your mustahab prayers while riding on your horse in a ranch or something. Or when you are, when you're walking, right? In these situations, yes, you do not have to worry about the Qibla, but it's only in these situations. If I'm praying mustahab normally, like I'm standing up and I'm doing my salat, or even if I'm sitting down, I still have to face the Qibla. If I don't face the Qibla, it's a problem. At least Ayatul Sistani has an obligatory precaution in this regard. This is one ruling that I know a lot of people may not know. They think that mustahab prayers, nothing is necessary for them. No, it is necessary. Yes, if you are in the car, for example, or you're maybe even on the plane, for example, those are situations where you don't have to worry about Qibla when it comes to mustahab prayer. Of course, praying in the plane, in terms of Qibla, wajib prayer, we'll get to that in just a second. Let me just take a look at some of the other questions that we had coming in. Yes. Brother Abdullah from Toronto. How are you, Brother Abdullah? Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. Is it makruh to sleep after Fajr and before sunrise? Yes. It's makruh to do that. So it's better not to do that. It's very simple and clear. Okay. Carrying on. So that's the first ruling regarding Qibla. Ruling number 2, when we talk about facing the Qibla, brothers and sisters, if you're in Mecca, yes, you have to like find the Kaaba and you got to face towards the Kaaba, right? Like you got to literally face the Kaaba is my point, okay? But our maraji, and as far as I know, all of the maraji, but what I know for 100% sure is Ayatul Khamni and Ayatul Sistani, they say, listen, if you're outside of Mecca, you don't have to literally face the Kaaba. You just have to technically be in the direction of the city of Mecca. And the further away you move away from the city, the more lenient the common view becomes of facing towards that city. So my point is that if I'm here praying in Dallas, right, I don't have to pray exactly at the right degree, that if they took a line and they drew this line and it went all the way around the world and, you know, it'll cut through the Kaaba, right? It cut through the two corners of the Kaaba. No, that's not what we're talking about. As long as people say, hey, he's facing towards Mecca, that's enough. Now, and I'll read off of the ruling in just a second. So why is that important? Because there's a lot of times where there's all these details, and I've seen this. Brothers and sisters will come and say, oh Shaykh, you have to go and tell the people, this person was praying, his salat was off by 2.5 degrees. His salat was off by 5 degrees. If you look at 5 degrees, people won't even be able to detect or be able to tell the difference of 5 degrees. Okay? So no, these maraji are saying that as long as in the common view, people look at you and say, hey, he's facing towards the qibla, then that's fine. When someone asks for qibla, you can say, hey, brother, it's straight and a tiny bit to the right. There you go. That person is going to stand straight and a tiny bit to the right. And that's going to be the qibla. You don't have to worry about, when I say you don't have to worry about this, because this is the ruling, that we don't have to worry about the exact degrees of the qibla, right? So there's quite a bit of leniency. Now, how much leniency exactly? That has to do with the common view, right? We can't give a particular number and say, oh, okay, up to 10 degrees is fine. No. It has to do with the common view. And it's going to be a little difficult. And figuring out the common view might even be slightly subjective between like me and you and different people, okay? But just know that there's a little bit of leniency over there. So that's the second ruling. Let me just read this ruling and then I'll get to some of the questions, because I see some of the questions are coming in. Yes, this is page 160 from Minhaj al-Salihin, volume 1. He says, وَالْقِبْلَةُ هِيَ الْمَكَانُ الْوَاقِعُ فِيهِ الْبَيْتُ الشَّرِيفِ. The Qibla is where the Kaaba is, basically. وَيَتَحَقَّقُ إِسْتِقْبَالُهُ بِالْمُحَاذَاةِ الْحَقِيقِيَّةِ مَعَ التَّمَكُّنِ مِنْ تَمْيِيزِ عَيْنِهِ. Yes, if you are there and you can literally see like the masjid and the Kaaba and stuff like that, then you have to literally like be praying exactly straightly towards the Kaaba. But if that's not the case, وَالْمُحَاذَاةِ الْعُرْفِيَّةِ عِنْدَ عَدَمِ التَّمَكُّنِ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. But when you can't see the Kaaba, which means you're in a different city or maybe in a different country or a different continent like us, al-muhadat al-urfiyya. So as long as the common view says, yes, he's Muslim, he prays towards the Qibla, he's standing in the direction of the Qibla, that's going to be enough. We don't have to worry too much about that part. Okay. Yes. So very weird thing is happening, unfortunately, to my Facebook. Your questions are popping up over here on my phone. For some reason, they are not popping up on my laptop. Let me see if I can just okay, here it is. Okay, Dr. Akbar is saying, so if people think that someone is taking salat lightly, it means it's haram to have or create such perception, and he or she has to work on it so people think that this person is not taking salat lightly. Yeah, so this person, like I said, has to take his game up a notch. That's just the wording that comes to my mind. No other wording comes. Like he has to make more effort, basically, right? So yeah, and I mean it's not perception in the sense that like if someone says this about me, then all of a sudden what I did is haram. It's like he has to say, in the common view, people say I'm making an effort and I'm really taking salat seriously, right? So it's the perception of people from what he understands people would perceive, if that makes sense. I hope that that's clear. Okay. Brother Ayman is asking, Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh, wa alaikum assalam. What about nawafil? Do they need to be facing the Qibla? Yes. Nawafil have to be facing the Qibla. So Ayatul Sistani on the same page. وَأَمَّا النَّوَافِلْ فَلَا يُعْتَبَرُ فِيهَا الْإِسْتِقْبَالِ حَالَ الْمَشْيِ وَالرُّكُوبِ. So in the nawafil, if you are walking or you're riding on something, and a plane this would also apply to a plane, then you don't have to face the Qibla. But if you're sitting like in your house, then yes, nawafil, you do have to pray towards the Qibla. Okay, Brother Shuja is asking, if someone prays and realizes that she was praying towards the wrong direction for weeks, what will happen to those prayers? Do you have to make up those prayers? Brother Shuja, very good question. What they need to do is they have to tune in, they have to stay tuned to our session, because we're going to answer that in just a second. I'm going to get to that question in just a second. Brother Abdullah is saying, thank you, Shaykh, no problem. Another question about Fajr. If someone has the intention and they put an alarm, but they don't wake up on time, is it still considered a sin to miss it if one did their best to wake up but weren't able to? No. If you try your best and you're not able to, then you tried your best and you weren't able to. Like I said, if this repeats over and over again, so much so that people say he's taking prayer lightly, then maybe he has to think of something else. Maybe he's got to sleep earlier. Maybe he has to ask someone to come and wake him up in the house. Maybe he has to set 20 alarms. Maybe he has to get one of those clocks that like, I've heard that like it won't turn off. I forgot what it was called. It was like some, I don't know. If you guys remember what the name is, you can put it in the comments. But it's like some thing that like won't turn off at all. I can't remember. Okay, moving on to the next question. Brother Hussein is asking, Salam Shaykh now, alaykum salam. If one is unable to determine the direction of the Qibla and the time of prayer is almost up, which way must they pray? Okay, so let me answer these. Let me go through the rulings, because these are answers to the questions that you guys are asking, and then I'll come back. If I haven't answered them, I'll I'll go with the rest of the questions. Okay, so so third ruling on Qibla. This will answer some of the questions that are in the comments. Third ruling on Qibla is this: that before you start prayer, you have to be sure about the direction of Qibla. You can't just guess. Even if you're kind of sure, you can't do that. You have to go around, you have to ask. If you have to delay your namaz, you have to delay your namaz. Right? I don't know if we deal with this too much nowadays, just because nowadays, like, everyone has a compass, and like usually you know roughly which way you're supposed to pray in. So I don't know if we deal with this too much, but at the end of the day, if you don't know which way you're supposed to pray, you have to find out one way or another. Okay, so you have to do research about it. Not like research, like go and like do like geography research. No, I just mean like you have to ask around, and you have to like try to see if you can find any clues that will tell you which way the Qibla is, and things of that nature. That's step number one. Step number two is that if there's anything that gives you even like a possibility that this way is the Qibla, then you have to go with that. This is if there's no way for you to find out the Qibla, and you've delayed your prayer as well, and now it's going to become qada. So this is actually the question that the brother was asking. So step two is you go with the jihat, or the direction that there is more of a possibility the Qibla is in that direction. And if you have no idea at all, then you will have to pray in all four directions. Okay. Let me see if yes. Okay. The ruling is a bit longer, so I'm not going to read off of it right now. Okay, so that's the answer to that question. I'm going to mention one more ruling, and this ruling is probably the most important ruling that we're going to cover today, because it's the one that we deal with the most. Okay, what am I supposed to do if I pray my salat and then afterwards I find out that my salat was prayed in the wrong direction? Okay, this is the ruling that like we really need to find an answer to. Okay, and this was actually Brother Shujah's question as well. Okay, so let's start from here. Ayatollah Khamenei and Ayatollah Sistani's ruling in this regard is pretty much the same. They have like a slight detail difference, but pretty much the same. So there's different situations, so I'm going to try to break this down. Okay, so first of all, there's a difference between situations where you were praying and the direction of the Qibla was less than 90 degrees from the direction in which you were praying. So basically you are less than 90 degrees off, right? That's the first categorization we're going to make. And then the second categorization that we need to make also is if you find out during prayer or you find out after prayer. And if you find out after prayer, is it after prayer during the allowed time of the prayer, meaning that there's still time for you to redo your namaz, or no, you found out after your prayer and the time of prayer is gone, like you find out that you've been praying the wrong namaz for like 2 weeks. So the 2 weeks, time of namaz of those 2 weeks is gone, right? It's out of the allowed time to pray the namaz for those 2 weeks, right? So these are the different categorizations. So let's start from here. If I prayed and the direction that I was praying, I was less than 90 degrees off from the right direction of the Qibla, and I find out after prayer, then that's completely fine. Okay? If it's less than 90 degrees. If I find out during prayer, what do I have to do? Whatever I did up until then is fine. From that point on, I'm going to change my position, find the right position, and then I'm going to start praying in that direction. Okay, so one more time. And this is the easier thing. And hopefully you're not more off than 90 degrees, okay? Although it can happen sometimes. I remember in our school, a lot of times the dorms that we had were set up in such a way where Like there was one set of rooms here, and then another set like this, just going all around the building, right? And it was funny because a lot of times the students would switch their room after a year or two, but they would pray in the same direction sometimes that they used to pray in their dorm. So like in their dorm, they used to pray towards the window. They were used to it. So now they switched their dorm, they'd still pray towards the window. And so that happens sometimes. Anyways, if it's less than 90 degrees and you realize after the prayer, you're good to go. You don't have to do anything. If you find out during the prayer, what are you going to do? You're just going to switch the qibla. And when you're switching, you should not be saying anything, right? Because your body is moving. That's another ruling that we have in salat. When your body is moving, you should not be saying anything. Okay. Now let's move on to the part where it gets a little bit more detailed, and that is, what if I'm off then with more than 90 degrees? If I'm off for more than 90 degrees, if I remember during the salat, I have to cut that salat. That salat is batil. Okay? If I remember after the salat, or I realize after the salat, or someone tells me after the salat, and like I said, my mistake was more than 90 degrees. So this is Ayatul Sistani's ruling. It might sound a little confusing at first, but just stick with me. He says that if it's after salat and there's still time to make up for it, you don't have to make up for it. If it's after salat and it's past the time, right? Let's say you prayed dhuhr 100 degrees off, and then someone told you at the time of Maghrib and Isha, right? He still says you do not have to make up for this, except for in one situation. And that one situation is, he says, listen, if you didn't even know the ruling that you're supposed to face towards the Qibla, and you didn't have an excuse in not knowing it, which is pretty much never, if you really think about it. I mean, you'll pretty much never come across someone who doesn't know they're supposed to face towards the Qibla when they're praying, unless they're a convert and like they were just learning about Islam, and in that case their ignorance is excusable because they were just learning about it. So hopefully this helps. So going back to Brother Shuja's, and I'm going to read off of this because this is an important ruling and we want to make sure we don't get this wrong. Going back to Brother Shuja's question, if someone prayed like this and after 5 or 6 weeks they realize that, oh, my prayer was, in the wrong direction. If they found out after, like you said, 2 weeks, right? Well, obviously the time of the prayers are finished. This person does not have to make up for those prayers. So let me just read off of this. This is ruling 516 from Minhaj al-Salihin, volume 1. من صلى إلى جهة اعتقد أنها القبلة ثم تبين الخطأ فإن كان منحرفا إلى ما بين اليمين والشمال صحت صلاته. If it's less than 90 degrees, then he's good to go. وإذا التفت في الأثناء مضى ما سبق واستقبل في الباقي من غير فرق بين بقاء الوقت وعدمه. Right? And if he finds out in the middle of the time, like in the middle of his prayer, he's just going to change the direction of his prayer and he's fine. Okay. وَأَمَّا إِذَا تَجَاوَزَ إِنْحِرَافُهُ عَمَّا بَيْنَ الْيَمِينِ وَالشِّمَالِ. If his mistake is more than 90 degrees, أَعَادَ فِي الْوَقْتِ إِذَا الْتَفَتَ بَعْدَ الصَّلَاةِ وَأَمَّا إِذَا الْتَفَتَ فِي الْأَثْنَاءِ. Yes, okay, so you see, this is why I read off of it, because this is one point I think I mentioned by mistake. If he has more than 90 degrees of mistake, right, and he remembers while the time of prayer is still there, he does have to make up for it. But if he remembers after the time has passed, he does not have to make up for it. So it's good that we read off of this. وَأَمَّا إِذَا تَجَاوَزَ إِنْحِرَافُهُ عَمَّا بَيْنَ الْيَمِينِ وَالشِّمَالِ أَعَادَ فِي الْوَقْتِ إِذَا الْتَفَتَ بَعْدَ الصَّلَاةِ. So if he still has a couple of hours for his salat and then he realized, oh, I made a mistake more than 90 degrees, he does have to make up for it, right? I think when I was explaining this earlier, I made a mistake, okay? وَأَمَّا إِذَا الْتَفَتَ فِي الْأَثْنَاءِ. We're going to leave that. وَلَا يَجِبُ الْقَضَاءِ. This is probably the most important one, the one that we deal with the most. وَلَا يَجِبُ الْقَضَاءِ إِذَا الْتَفَتَ خَارِجَ الْوَقْتِ إِلَّا فِي الْجَاهِلِ بِالْحُكْمِ. And we explained that pretty much nobody is jahil al-hukm when it comes to this issue. So, if I wanted to wrap it up very quickly, if you made a mistake less than 90 degrees, you remembered after salat, you're fine. If you remember in salat, you just change your direction. If you made a mistake more than 90 degrees, in salat, you have to restart your namaz. After salat, the time is still remaining, you have to make up for it. After salat, there's no time remaining, you do not have to make up qada for that prayer. Ayatollah Khamenei's rulings are pretty much the same thing. Let me just read off of that as well, because this is a ruling that we all deal with quite a bit. Just pull up the ruling here. Yes, man salla ila jihatin bi tariqin mu'tabarin thumma tabayyana khatu'uhu sahat salatuhu if it's less than 90 degrees. And then he continues to say, وصحت على الأقوى ولو مع الاستدبار وإن تجاوز انحرافه عما بينهما أعاد في الوقت دون خارجه. So if he makes a mistake for more than 90 degrees, like Ayatollah Sistani, if he remembers while he still has the time, then he's going to make up for it. If he remembers outside of the allowed time of the prayer, then he does not have to make up for that anymore. Okay, let me go back. This was probably the most important ruling that we've discussed in today's session. Okay. We answered this. Brother Shuja's question, hopefully we answered that. Brother Hussein, salam Shaykh, if one is unable, wa alaikum salam, if one is unable to determine the direction of the qibla and the time of prayer is almost up, which way must they pray? We explained this already. Brother Muhammad Ali is saying, so technically there are two directions to the qibla, or is it the shortest direction that is taken into account? No, the shortest direction is taken into account. This is something that Ayatollah Sistani and Ayatollah Khamenei have mentioned. And it goes back to what the common view would consider as facing towards something, right? Like if I have this lamp in front of me or this phone in front of me, right? Technically I could turn around and you do that whole line thing around the whole world and stuff like that. Technically I'm facing it, right? But the common view does not call this al-istiqbal. Because the common view does not consider it istiqbal, from a fiqhi perspective, this is also not considered istiqbal. This is also not considered facing the qibla. If I turn my back towards this phone, people say, hey, he's not facing the phone anymore. I can act smart and say, oh, you draw a line around the world, you know? We could do that, but that's not what that's talking about. Brother Akbar is saying, what about driving and praying nawafil? Like I mentioned, when you are in a car or a plane or you are walking, you do not have to face the qibla while you're doing nawafil. But if you're just sitting down and you're doing it, then you have to face the qibla. Yes, Brother Bilal has answered that question. Okay, Sister Zainab saying, Alaikum assalam, assalamu alaikum maulana, wa alaikum assalam. Do we have to face the qibla for nawafil if you are working on computer at workplace? I would say yes. Yeah, as far as I know, you would have to. Okay, Brother Arif is saying, Maulana, generally for North America, general direction is 43 degrees northeast. Do we have to use Qibla finder or can you use a compass? No, Brother Arif, very good question. No, anything that brings you a certainty or even confidence that this is the, because when we say certainty, maybe it might be understood that we're talking about like being 100% sure. No, like even if you're like 98, 99% sure, right? You're confident in this regard, then you can go ahead and do that. It doesn't matter what you use. What matters is, are you sure and confident that this is the way of Qibla, right? Not that it's just a chance that this is the way of Qibla, right? Not then. Then it's like 70% like, hey, I guess this is the way of the Qibla. No, you have to be sure. But whatever brings you that certainty and that confidence, that's going to be fine. No, you don't have to use a Qibla compass, a Qibla finder, if you already know the degrees. I personally don't use a Qibla finder too often myself, although sometimes I do. But okay, so Brother Bilal has answered that question. Yes. Shaykh Mahdi, correct me. It seems like the only time you have to worry about praying in wrong direction prior to the Sistani is if you're in middle of prayers. Is that correct summary? No, Brother Bilal. Like we said, there are times where you would have to make up for your prayer. Like for example, if I made a mistake more than 90 degrees and then I remembered while the time of prayer is still there, I have to make up for that salat. So if you go back, I made a quick summary. Brother Abdullah is saying, if you have to make up for it and you realize while you're in salat, do you break the salat right away or do you finish it anyways and then make up for it? Again, This is if you're praying in the wrong qibla. Ayatollah Sistani says you break that salat. The only situation where he says you don't break the salat is if you don't have enough time. Then you can finish your salat and then you can redo it later. Brother Muhammad Akbar is saying, so when you say change direction, you mean just continue same prayer but just shift your body. But if greater than 90 degrees, then stop and restart. Yes, Brother Muhammad Akbar, that is correct. Sister Sharmeen is saying, if we prayed more than 90 degrees away from Qibla and found out a few days later, what is the ruling for Ayatollah Khouyi? Honestly, I don't know the ruling according to Ayatollah Khouyi. I'm pretty sure it's very similar to Ayatollah Sistani, but I can't say for sure, honestly. So if you'd like, we can look into that, inshallah, and get back to you on that, inshallah. Okay. Let me just see if there are any more. Okay, just a couple more rulings that we have to cover here, and then inshallah, we can end, inshallah. Another ruling is that if you do see someone praying in the wrong direction, is it wajib for you to go and tell that person? No, it's not necessarily wajib for you to go and tell that person. You might want to tell that person, maybe because they might have to make up for some of their prayers, for example, later on. So yeah, but if it's a person who's visiting or technically the only ruling that I wanted to mention here is that you don't have to jump in the middle of the time of prayer, in the middle of his prayer, and say, hey, you're praying your namaz in the wrong direction. Right? That's not wajib. So just as far as mentioning that's all I wanted to get across. Number 7, and this ruling inshallah is the last ruling I'll mention, is that if someone is sick and they have to pray sick or tired, well, we shouldn't say tired because tiredness will just go away, but someone has a physical condition and they can't pray normally, like standing up or even sitting down, and they have to pray lying down, it's important to understand how they are supposed to face the qibla, right? Like we say, when you put someone who's leaving this world, you put the body of someone who's passed away in the grave, there's a specific way that you're supposed to put it in the grave so that it faces the qibla, right? Like you can't put the head towards the qibla. That's the wrong way of doing things, right? So when it comes to prayer, this is also important to keep in mind. So what are you supposed to do? So if this person is going to pray while lying down, before going to his back, he has to see if he can pray while lying on his right. Okay, and if he can do that, then his face will be facing the qibla, right? Similar to the way that when we put someone inside of the grave, the way the body will be facing the qibla. If not, you do the same thing with the left side now, right? You just lie down on the left side, and your face and your chest basically would be facing the qibla, right? If not, then this person is going to lie down on his back, and now his feet are going to be facing the qibla. This is, of course, a rare situation, maybe something that some of our elders might deal with, or we have mothers and fathers who may be physically not able to pray as they normally used to. This is a ruling that has to do with that. Okay, so we're done with these. I'm just going to check to see if we have any more questions. Yes. Brother Shahmir is asking, what's the best way to break the salat? Right at the moment, or should I finish early with tashahhud? So there is no such thing as finishing early with tashahhud, right? There are some situations where if you have to make up a prayer, you have to restart it. The scholars will say, end your salat and then restart it, right? But that means you have to do your full salat, right? Or they will say, no, the salat is batil, you can just walk away. Okay? But there is no idea of finishing early. So like, for example, if I do a dhuhr prayer, and for whatever reason my prayer, I realize it's batil, I have to restart it. There isn't, in either situation, there's never going to be a time that you will do 2 rakats and do your tashahhud and then break it, right? That we don't have that, right? But depending on the situation and the ruling and what you made your namaz batil, or what has made your namaz necessary to make it up for, I shouldn't say batil, but what has made it necessary for you to redo your salat. There are times where the maraji will tell you that you have to continue your salat and finish it and then restart it. There are times where they will tell you that no, you can just break off your salat from right now. Like situations where I realize I don't have wudu, is one of those situations where you can just break off your salat from that point. But there are times where they say you have to redo your salat, but still you have to go all the way to the end. You'll forgive me, I can't give a very simple answer to the question because it is a detailed answer, depending on why you have to make up your salat. Sister Marwa is asking, Salam Shaykh, wa alaikum salam. In regards to wajib prayers on a plane, how would the qibla be taken into account, and must these prayers be made up? So inshallah we'll discuss praying in a plane when we come to the place of prayer, but we'll answer this question right here, that you can pray on a plane. If you can pray normally, you are allowed to pray on a plane. Okay, so if you don't have to pray sitting down, you can pray on the plane at any time that you like. If the qibla changes, similar to what we've had in the other rulings, you would have to change the qibla that you are, the direction basically of your body, right? So, and again, this doesn't happen very often, especially on long flights. It's very unlikely that the plane will be making changes of direction mid-flight, okay? Like if you're flying from here to the Middle East, for like 10 hours of that flight, your plane is going to be in the same direction anyways, okay? If you see it changing direction in the middle, that's not a good sign. That means something else is going on, okay? But anyways, so my point is, it's not something we deal with too much. But yes, if the plane does change direction, you would have to change direction also in the middle. Like I said, we'll talk more about praying in the plane when we talk about the place in which you're praying. Are you allowed to even pray in the plane? Like I said, the answer is yes, if you can pray normally. If not, like you have to sit down with certain airways, like Qatar Airways, unfortunately, speaking from personal experience, you would have to wait until you get to your destination if you have enough time. If you don't have enough time, then you would have to pray on the plane while sitting down. But there's some details to that we'll discuss, inshallah, in the future sessions. Okay. Yes, Brother Abdul Munis is saying, can Farz Salat be prayed while driving car or riding a car or in a plane? So I hopefully that answered that question already. So driving a car or riding in a car, no. You would have to just pull over. Unless you don't even have that option, right? Which is pretty unlikely. Yes, Brother Maulana, I heard to break the salat, one has to move away face from qibla. I'm not sure if Brother Arif, you could clarify what you mean exactly. I'm not clear on what you are referring to. If you could just explain it a little bit more. Brother Hussein is asking, Salam Shaykh, wa alaikum salam. What is the ruling according to Sayyid Sistani in regards to if there are photos in front of you while you are praying? Honestly, as far as I know, it's not. What we know for sure is that it's not going to make your salat batil. We know that for sure. From what I remember, and I'll double check with this and verify this in our next session as well, inshallah. But as far as I remember, it's makruh to have photos. But it's just makruh. It's not going to create a problem for your salat. All right. Thank you very much to everyone who joined us today. Alhamdulillah, I really enjoyed the session. We have another comment. Is this a question? Yes, Brother Muhammad Ali is asking, what if you do not know the qibla direction nor the time? Would you still need to pray? That's some third dimension type of world. Like, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if we'd ever deal with something like that. But honestly, I don't know the answer to that one, Brother Muhammad Ali. Okay, so inshallah, we'll be ending the session. Thank you very much for joining us. As you know, tomorrow, inshallah, Shaykh Amin will have his session on the Shia doctrine, which is basically going through the belief system of the followers of the Shia school of thought. Please do share this session, other sessions with anyone who might be interested, and if you haven't already, please like the Facebook page. Inshallah, we can help grow it, and inshallah, can also That way you guys can get updates on the courses that are coming up. Shaykh Amin will be, inshallah, having a number of courses on in I think Toronto is coming up in a week, afterwards New York, afterwards Houston, Atlanta. These are all courses that are coming up. If you are interested in holding a course in your community, do reach out to us here on Facebook, on Mizan Institute's inbox. You can just send us a message, and hopefully we can make that happen as well. We have different topics coming up. We have the tafsir of Quran. We have the series that Shaykh Amin is going to be teaching and be working on, death and barzakh. And right now the first part is being offered, which has to do with barzakh. After that, that'll move on to Yawmul Qiyamah, and that's a wonderful topic to be a part of. Inshallah, we'll have another one coming up on the idea, on the topic of Tawheed, and all of the questions that come up regarding the concept of Tawheed, atheism and evolution and all that stuff. That also is being put together and being finalized as we speak, and other topics as well. You can also check out the website, mizaninstitute.org. Inshallah, you can find out more information about our sessions as well. Thank you very much for being with us. Hope to see you guys again in the next sessions. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.